The galactic concord was ancient. Long before humanity ever looked up at the night sky and dreamed of reaching the stars, the Concord had cataloged billions of systems, filed reports on habitable worlds, and built maps that spanned the spiral arms of the galaxy. Their archives were vast, meticulously ordered, and respected as near sacred. Among those endless records, there was a category marked in warning red, Deathworld. The classification was reserved for planets whose environments were so hostile, so merciless in their design, that survival was considered improbable, even impossible. For anything more complex than microbes, a Deathworld was a planet where evolution itself seemed to conspire against life. Dense atmospheres full of toxins, unpredictable tectonics, oceans capable of crushing steel, or ecosystems in which every creature was either predator or prey, and neither ever safe. Most species of the Concord did not dare approach such planets. They had come from gentler homes, worlds where stability bred peace, where herbivores rose to sentience, and where survival depended on cooperation rather than constant confrontation. Their civilizations had grown cautious, preferring predictability over risk. To them, a Deathworld was not just dangerous, it was inconceivable. And yet, on one such world, life had not only clung to existence but flourished. The Concord knew it as Terra-3 to them. It was a statistical anomaly, orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. A planet cursed with extremes, roaring winds that scoured landscapes clean, seasons that swung violently between burning heat and freezing ice, and predators at every level of the food chain. Terra-3 was dismissed as uninhabitable, dangerous, a curiosity, nothing more. But to its inhabitants, it had another name: Earth. On Earth, survival was never granted. It had to be seized, fought for, and earned every single day. Humanity's ancestors had not risen by accident. They had clawed their way to dominance with tooth, fire, and cunning. In the primal forests and on the open plains, humans had learned to stalk, to plan, and to kill. They were not born the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most resilient. But they were adaptive, and in a world where everything was trying to kill them, adaptation was the only weapon that mattered. Predators came in many forms. Some stalked in silence, striking from the shadows. Others chased until exhaustion claimed their quarry. Some relied on venom, others on brute force. Humanity had studied them all and borrowed what was useful: patience from the serpent, endurance from the wolf, cooperation from the pack hunters, and above all, an intelligence sharper than any fang or claw. Earth was not merciful. Its storms drowned civilizations. Its quakes shattered mountains. Its smallest creatures carried invisible killers in their blood. Humanity learned to endure these trials not by hiding, but by facing them head-on. Fire was tamed. Tools were forged. Communities were built not in harmony with the planet, but in defiance of it. Every human invention was born from struggle, every culture shaped by hardship. To outsiders, such a world seemed monstrous. To humans, it was simply home. That difference, though subtle, would one day shake the galaxy. When the first rocket split the sky, humans were not thinking of conquest. They were thinking of survival, of curiosity, of the endless urge to push boundaries. The planet that had once tried so hard to kill them had taught them a simple truth: nothing worth having comes without struggle. So they struggled upward, past the atmosphere, past the pull of gravity, into the void itself. The void, compared to Earth, was not frightening. It was silent, predictable, and empty of predators. Dangerous, yes, but not vicious. Space, for all its risks, was tame compared to the jungles, deserts, and oceans of their homeworld. Where other species saw the stars as peril, humans saw them as opportunity. The galactic concord noticed eventually. Their sensors picked up human signals. Their catalogs flagged an anomaly. An intelligent species had emerged from a Deathworld. This was not unprecedented, but it was vanishingly rare. The few species that had clawed their way off such planets tended to burn out quickly, too aggressive, it's too unstable, too destructive to last. So the Concord made its judgment and moved on. Humans, they thought, would be no different. They were predators from a vicious Deathworld. Dangerous, perhaps, but destined to self-destruct. What the Concord did not understand was that survival, for humans, was not just instinct. It was identity. They were not merely shaped by their planet, they were forged by it. And when humanity finally stepped into the wider galaxy, they carried Terra's lessons with them: adaptability, persistence, and the ruthless will to fight for every inch of existence. The predators of a vicious Deathworld had arrived. The Grivion League prided itself on being the galaxy's most accomplished diplomats. Their species had risen from fragile beginning-scaled quadrupeds, no taller than a human's waist, with bones so light that even a fall from a ledge could prove fatal. They survived not through strength or predation, but through compromise, negotiation, and trade. To the Grivians, the galaxy was safest when every species was bound together in agreements. Their instincts dulled by treaties and their tempers cooled by commerce. When word spread that a new, spacefaring race had emerged, the League was quick to act. They had no interest in allowing a young, potentially volatile species to grow unchecked. It was better, they reasoned, to bring them into the fold early, before they developed dangerous ambitions. The intercept took place at the edge of neutral space, in a quiet sector where few Concord patrols traveled. A lone human survey vessel was cataloging asteroid resources when the Grivian diplomatic frigate approached. The humans, unaware of the Concord's vast reach, hailed the newcomers with open curiosity. And then they smiled. On every monitor aboard the Grivian vessel, the human captain appeared, tall, bipedal, skin stretched over dense muscle, with forward-facing eyes that locked directly onto the camera. But worse, far worse, was the expression. The human pulled back its lips, exposing rows of flat but unmistakably predatory teeth. To a Grivian, that was the universal signal of imminent attack. Gasps of fear filled the chamber. Guards twitched nervously, their talons tightening on energy rifles. Even the diplomat himself recoiled. The translator word stuttered, and then delivered the captain's words in carefully processed tones. "Greetings. We come in peace. We're thrilled to meet you. Peace." Thrilled. The Grivian envoy trembled. Why? Why do you bare your fangs? Why show threat while speaking friendship? The human tilted his head, confused for a moment before laughing. The sound was worse than the smile, a booming, guttural bark that resonated with primal dominance. "Oh, this." He pointed to his teeth. "It means we're happy. It's a smile. Happy. A smile." The envoy nearly fainted. What kind of species displayed its weapons, its very instruments of consumption, when expressing joy? That first meeting set the tone for everything that followed. The Grivians tried to adapt, to overlook the horror of human mannerisms. They noticed how humans leaned forward during conversation, as though preparing to pounce. How their eyes tracked movement obsessively, never breaking focus. How they gestured with open hands, each finger tipped with blunt but dangerous nails. Even when still, there was a coiled tension to them, like predators waiting for the moment to strike. But what unsettled the Grivians most was not human occurrence, it was human history and cultural exchanges. Humans spoke casually of wars fought not against alien invaders, but against each other. Entire continents had burned in conflict. Empires had risen and fallen in bloody succession. Weapons of unimaginable power had been created, used, and later restrained by nothing more than human will. When asked why they endured such cycles, humans gave answers that baffled their hosts. "We fight because we must. We fight because freedom is worth it. We fight because we won't be prey." The Grivions compiled their observations into a series of reports sent to the Galactic Concord. Their tone grew increasingly alarmed. The species calling themselves humans originate from Terra 3, a planet designated as a Deathworld. Their physiology reflects this dense bone, thick musculature, and endurance that borders on the unnatural. Their psychology is worse. They equate confrontation with growth and violence with survival. Their social structures are competitive, not cooperative. They are predators who evolved to dominate other predators. The Concord officials, reviewing the files, were dismissive. After all, every young race appeared frightening at first. The Concord had seen warlike species before, and most either mellowed over time or destroyed themselves in their own violence. Why should humans be different? The Grivians disagreed. They had looked into human eyes forward, facing, unblinking. Hunter's eyes, and they had seen something that chilled them to the marrow. These were not prey creatures dabbling in defense. These were apex predators. They did not yield easily. They did not submit naturally. Still, the League pressed on with diplomacy, hoping that trade might blunt human instincts. But their words, their treaties, their attempts to bind the humans with contracts and agreements all met the same response: smiles. Endless, tooth-bearing smiles. To the humans, this was friendliness. To the Grivians, it was a nightmare dressed as courtesy. By the time the Concord finally acknowledged the threat, it was already too late. The galaxy had noticed the humans, and the humans had noticed the galaxy. And once predators become aware of a wider hunting ground, they do not. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. That truth became undeniable the moment the Krath Dominion chose to test them. The Krath were no timid prey species, nor a league of merchants who measured their worth in treaties. They were predators in their own right, massive reptilian. Warriors bred on a volcanic world where survival meant crushing one's rivals beneath fang and claw. For centuries, the Dominion had carved out an empire through terror, raiding weaker neighbors and demanding tribute. They believed themselves apex predators of the stars. When word reached them of humanity's expansion into nearby systems, they did not hesitate. A new species, Deathworld, bold and untested, was nothing more than a challenge to their dominance. The Krath understood only one language: conquest. And so they struck. Their first target was the fledgling human colony on Proxima's third moon. To the Krath, it seemed an easy victory. The settlement was young, its defenses rudimentary, its people spread thin across half-built domes and mining sites. The Krath descended in fire, expecting panic, surrender, and the sweet satisfaction of tearing apart an upstart species before it could rise too far. Instead, they found humans waiting. The colonists had seen the incoming warships. They had no fleets, no legions, no standing armies. But what they did have was the instinct of their Deathworld heritage. When danger came, you did not flee. You fought. You adapted. You endured. The first wave of Krath troops landed near the mining rigs. Within minutes, their forward scouts began to vanish. One was dragged into a ventilation shaft and never returned. Another was found hours later, his armor torn apart, his body riddled with improvised blades carved from excavation tools. The Krath commander dismissed it as resistance from desperate prey. But as the battle stretched on, the truth became clear. These humans did not fight like prey. They fought like predators, relentless, cunning, and infuriatingly resourceful. Ambushes were sprung in narrow tunnels, where Krath size became a disadvantage. Fuel lines were rigged as traps, detonating into firestorms that swallowed entire squads. Colonists armed with little more than hunting rifles coordinated with uncanny precision, striking from cover and disappearing before counterattacks could land. When the Krath seized the colony's central dome, they expected the humans to surrender. Instead, they watched in horror as the settlers detonated their own habitat, denying the invaders both victory and shelter. Humans called it sacrifice. The Krath called it madness, but madness had teeth. Every setback enraged the Dominion. They sent more soldiers, more ships, more firepower, and for every assault, the humans grew more dangerous. They studied their enemies, learned their tactics, exploited their weaknesses. Where the Krath relied on brute force, the humans used creativity. Where the Krath sought intimidation, humans responded with defiance. It was not simply a clash of armies, it was a war of predators. The Krath saw themselves as hunters, but now they faced prey that bit back, prey that set traps, prey that turned the very concept of hunter and hunted on its head. The Krath had never known such a foe. Their wars against weaker species were hunts. Their war against humans was survival. Weeks turned into months. The Dominion poured resources into the campaign, determined to crush this defiant species. But the harder they pressed, the more feral humanity became. Colonists rose as guerrilla fighters. Supply lines vanished in the dark, picked apart by human raiders. Even in defeat, humans inflicted wounds that bled the Krath's pride. Finally, after a string of costly losses, the Krath Council ordered a withdrawal. They did not frame it as defeat. No predator would admit to being bested, but their retreat spoke louder than words. The Dominion had learned what the Grivian League had already warned. Humans could not be subdued. They were too stubborn to surrender, too creative to corner, too relentless to break. For the first time in their long history of domination, the Krath had gazed into the eyes of another predator and seen something more dangerous than themselves. Something patient, something cunning, something that would never stop until the fight was done. The galaxy took notice. Stories spread quickly through trade lanes and diplomatic channels. The humans had survived a Dominion onslaught. Not only survived, they had driven the Krath back. Some species whispered in admiration. Others shivered in fear. But all came to the same realization. The predators of Terra 3 were not prey. They were hunters. And they had just proven it against one of the galaxy's fiercest predators. From that moment on, the question was no longer whether humanity would endure in the stars. It was how far their hunger, their will, and their unyielding instinct would carry them. The Krath Dominion's retreat should have ended the conflict, but in truth, it was only the beginning. The galaxy had been watching. Every slaver, every raider, every empire that thrived on domination took note of the humans' resilience. Most expected them to lick their wounds, to hide behind their fragile colonies and rebuild. That was the way of prey. When a predator passed, they crouched low, silent and timid, until the danger moved on. But humans were not prey. The lessons of Terra had taught them something simple. When a threat appears, you do not wait for it to return. You hunt it down. You make certain it never comes back. And so, humanity began to move not cautiously, not defensively, but with the practiced patience of a predator extending its reach into new hunting grounds. It started with the raiders. Pirates had long plagued the outer systems, preying on merchant vessels and striking from hidden asteroid bases. For centuries they had gone unchecked, their hit-and-run tactics too scattered for the Concord to eliminate. But then, humans marked them as prey. Convoys stopped falling to ambushes. Instead, raider ships began to vanish, found later drifting in silence, their crews gone without a trace. Rumors spread that humans could track pirate vessels through dust clouds, follow them across light years, and strike with uncanny precision. It was said they never attacked in fury or haste. They stalked. They waited. They struck when escape was impossible. For the first time, pirates felt hunted. Slavers learned next. They had assumed humans young, scattered, vulnerable would be perfect stock for the trade. Their physiology was hardy, their reproductive cycles fast, their labor potential immense. Slavers launched raids on isolated outposts, expecting easy captures. They did not expect what came after. Within weeks of the first human children being chained in alien markets, entire slaver rings began disappearing. Ships vanished into the void. Markets were burned from orbit. The survivors told tales of human boarding parties that fought with feral precision, of soldiers who stormed fortified stations with a cold, relentless fury. These humans did not simply rescue their own, they dismantled the entire chain of trade, cutting off the head and burning the body. They did not negotiate. They did not threaten. They hunted, and the galaxy noticed. At first, some species viewed humanity's actions as terrifying. Others whispered admiration, even gratitude. For the weak and the oppressed, humans became a shield. the only race willing to bear fangs on their behalf. For the predators, however, humanity became something else. Competition. It was not that humans sought conquest. Their colonies remained modest, their fleets still small compared to the Concord's great powers, but wherever they went, they imposed a new law. No prey would be taken while predators stood guard. It was not ideology, nor was it altruism. It was instinct. Honed by a Deathworld that had made them the hunters of hunters, and they did it with unsettling selectivity. Humans did not kill indiscriminately. They studied, they marked, they chose. An empire might continue its politics unchallenged, but the moment it crossed a line, slavery, cruelty, predation, without purpose humans struck. They pursued their quarry with patience that spanned years, waiting for the perfect opening. When it came, the strike was final, absolute, and irreversible. Other races began to whisper a proverb. If a human marks you as prey, run. Not because you will escape, but because running is all you will have time to do. To the humans themselves, it was nothing extraordinary. It was simply the way of their people. On Earth, they had learned to stalk game across miles of wilderness, to plan ambushes that required endless patience, to endure exhaustion until the prey faltered. Now, they carried those instincts into the stars. Yet there was something else that unsettled the galaxy. For all their ferocity, humans smiled. They laughed. They traded. They offered aid to weaker species, building bonds of trust where others sowed fear. They were predators, yes, but they were not mindless killers. They hunted with purpose. They hunted by choice. That paradox: smiles with teeth, kindness with violence, mercy with vengeance, confused the Concord. Were humans protectors, or were they monsters? Could one species truly be both? The galaxy did not yet know the answer. But they understood one truth beyond question. Humanity had outgrown its cradle. It had stepped beyond survival, beyond defense. It was no longer the newcomer ignored by the Concord, or the upstart dismissed by the creditor. It was a predator among predators.